Hello everyone, my name is Phoebe Olsen and I am an archaeologist and expedition team member with Noble Caledonia. Today I'd like to talk to you a bit about the voyages that we do around the Caribbean and Central America. Obviously these itineraries are full of amazing wildlife opportunities and there are a wealth of towns of cities of huge historical significance. But of course, it has an amazing prehistory story to tell as well. And we can see that through the amazing archaeological sites that we are allowed to visit in caves, in temples, and in settlement sites that show you what life was like for ordinary people at that time. So we'll start on the Atlantic side. We'll begin with the country of Belize, then across to the Dominican Republic. Then we'll sneak down through the Panama Canal and do the Pacific side of Nicaragua, El Salvador, and then up to Guatemala. So first to the country of Belize, which is home to the Mayan city of Lamani. Now, the word Lamani actually means submerged crocodile. And we think it probably meant this species. So this was more or less crocodile, the Mexican crocodile, which is described as a modest-sized crocodile. And I would not really use the word modest to describe anything to do with crocodiles, but that's probably why I'm an archaeologist and not a biologist. They are found in the freshwaters of Mexico, Belize, and of Guatemala. They're present in the fossil record as well in Guatemala, so they have been around for a very long time, and they were definitely around when Lamani was being constructed. It is actually one of the oldest continuously inhabited archaeological zones in the Maya world, and it is one of a handful of sites that has retained its original name, and that is probably because it was still inhabited in the late 1600s when the Spanish arrived, and therefore they could ask what the name of the place was and record it as such. Whereas many other sites that we go to or in around the area, they have now been given a new Spanish name or a new name that supplants the original. Most of the site is unrestored, so you feel like you're the first ones to walk in and discover it after it's been laying dormant for hundreds of years. You're walking through the jungle and you can hear howler monkeys, and if you've never heard howler monkeys in the distance, it is the most wonderful primal noise, and to hear that while looking at these ruins is something else entirely. It was originally settled in the year 1000 BC, and like I said, not abandoned until well late into the 1600s, after the Spanish arrived. They started building the monuments around 300 BC, starting off with stone platforms with organic structures on top, probably out of wood, which have not survived to this day. Later in 280 was when they started building the temples, like the temple that you can see in the picture here. And a lot of these structures were still being modified well into the 1400s, which is interesting because other sites in the area at that time were either in decline or had been abandoned altogether. So the indication that these structures were still being modified means that the settlement was still thriving at that time. It was probably one of the only ones in the locality that was still thriving at this point. It is on a strategic location on the river, in fact, that we have to use to get there. We use the river boats to visit this monument. And it was an important aspect for it because trade was really the big thing for this settlement. They traded obsidian, jade, and cinnabar coming down from the Guatemalan highlands, and then salt, honey, and cacao came from the coast. In the 12th century, copper objects started to appear, and though we're very familiar with copper objects up here in Europe in particular, these were quite rare in the Mayan world, and actually Lamani represents one of the highest concentration of such copper objects. They were normally found in as grave goods, so deliberately placed in the grave. Things like bells, needles, fish hooks, and trinkets such as that were found. And if you come with us on the Panama Canal Corals and Cultures Tour, you will be able to visit the wonderful city of Lamani, and as you can see, it's towards the end of the trip there, the last stop in Belize. Now across to the Dominican Republic, something a bit different from the temples that we just saw. Now we'll be looking at caves. So here we are on the Samana Peninsula, and it's Los Haitises National Park. It is one of the Dominican Republic's largest protected areas. It is a rugged karst landscape with huge 30-meter high rock formations, or limestone rock formations, jutting out of an emerald bay with this backdrop of the lush jungle behind it is really something to see. Haitises is the Taino word for highlands. The Taino were the indigenous people of the area. So it was their word for highlands. And we actually use Taino words in everyday English now. So if you've ever used the word hammock, barbecue, tobacco, canoe, or hurricane, they were all originally Taino words as well. So this region is home to rainforest and mangroves. It is a key bird nesting site with over 200 species of bird, but it also has caves, and that is where we find the archaeology. So the Taino use the caves for rituals, but also as a place of refuge from hurricanes and other natural disasters. But today we can access them via footbridges and also through just general pathways moving into the caves. There are two caves of interest. The first one is called Cueva de la Línea, and that is known as Railway Cave, and that is because of the 18th century railway that used to run through it, transporting rice and bananas. You know, as I said previously, that a lot of these places have been renamed in recent times, and we don't actually know the original name for them anymore. So this is Cueva de la Línea, and the walls are full of pictographs, either representing humans or animals or supernatural beings. Some represent shamans. There's one of Bayanel, who is the god of rain. There's a heron and a shark, and also depiction of a humpback whale, because they visit the area between January and March, which is around the time that we cruise in the area. So hopefully, not only would we see a pictograph of the humpback on the wall, we might actually see them in real life as we are then cruising away. Pictographs mean basically drawing. So picture is a drawing, graph to paint onto the wall. So these are kind of cave paintings or cave drawings. In Cueva de la Arena, which is Sandy Cave, the one that's pictured here, you have petroglyphs. So petro meaning stone and glyph meaning carving. So these are carved into the stone wall. As you can see, there's seawater in the base of this cave. That is because the caves actually start right on the water's edge. You have to come in through it, and it still has a sandy bottom. The two petroglyphs that you can see there. One is of an owl whose nose is apparently slowly deteriorating because of the limestone. It does slowly weather away. So one of an owl, and then the second one is of a person's face with a thick mustache. And we visit that one on island hopping in the Caribbean. And there we visit, you can see Dominican Republic and Samana. Samana is the name of the peninsula where we have these caves. Now we go through to the Pacific side, and we're heading to Nicaragua, and then we go to Grenada. So Grenada is actually on the shore of the lake that you can see there, and there we will be visiting Convento San Francisco. It is one of the oldest churches in South America, but that is not why it is necessarily of interest, or at least not to me. It is actually now a museum, and it focuses on Nicaragua's pre-Hispanic people. The highlight of its collection is the Zapatera statuary, which is what is pictured here, these rows of statues. They are rows of black basalt statues, and they were carved by the Chorotega people of Zapatera 1,000 years ago. Zapatera is an island in the lake Cochibolca. So that is the lake that Grenada is on the shore of. Zapatera is an island in it. It is also a shield volcano, currently dormant, and they were carved there by the people who lived on it, and they were carving them about 1,000 years ago. They were rediscovered in the 1800s, and in the 1920s they were brought to Grenada and then housed in the Convento San Francisco. They are between 1 and 2.5 meters high, and they depict both human and animal forms, and we speculate that they represent either deities or maybe high status individuals. They likely formed part of a ceremonial installation in their original position on the island, and there were engravings found near to where they would have been originally situated. And if the engravings are accurate, these statues may have actually witnessed certain ceremonies that may or may not have involved human sacrifice as well. And we can visit this on 2 occasions, so on the Ancient and Natural Wonders of Central America and Central American Odyssey. We visit Granada on both those trips. Heading up to El Salvador and the archaeological site of Joya de Ceren, and it's near the capital of San Salvador there, El Salvador. So we're taking a break from large monuments, large temples, large statues, and this will give us an idea of what ordinary life would have been like. So like I said, it's an archaeological site. You can see in the picture there, you can see all the layers that have been excavated down to expose the structures. It is known as the Pompeii or the Herculaneum of the Americas. So it was a pre-Hispanic farming community, and it was buried under ash, the eruption of the Laguna Caldera volcano around AD 600, which, to put it in kind of the time frame for you in Britain, that was around the time of the Anglo-Saxon period. The exceptional condition of the remains gives an insight into the daily life that would have been there at that time. Ironically enough, the reason why people settled this region is because an earlier eruption of the Ilopango volcano in 260 AD was weathered into very fertile soil. So the area was very fertile because of an earlier eruption. People settled it and started to farm it. And about 100 to 200 years later, then that was covered again by a subsequent eruption of a different volcano. So it is a snapshot of 100 to 200 years in time. Excavations began in 1989 and they continue to this day. So we are continuously learning more about this site. So far, 18 structures have been uncovered, and these include domestic homes, storehouses, there's a kitchen, and also a sweat house has been uncovered, and they continue to discover more. Amazingly for here, it is not just the structures that survive, but also items made of organic material, because organic material, as you know, in the tropics doesn't last very long. So we actually have examples here, things like sleeping mats and also of garden implements. It is testimony to the lives of the ordinary people, and it is good to see it, especially alongside the other places that we visit, these huge temples. Speaking of huge temples, this is Tazumal, and it's not far from Joya de Ceren, and it is the largest pyramid in El Salvador. It was occupied for about 3,000 years, but it didn't look like this for 3,000 years. For the first 1,000 years, it was kind of a smaller settlement, probably along the lines of Joya de Ceren, and then they started to monument build. There was a pause in its occupation because this place was also affected by the eruption of the Ilopango volcano that resulted in such fertile soils elsewhere. And the area was cleared out for about 200 to 300 years, and then people came back to the same place and inhabited the old structures. The largest structure in the complex is about 24 meters high, and it is comprised of 12 platforms or big, large steps moving upwards. And there's a complex of tombs. There are over 100 vessels. There's jade jewelry, mirrors of iron pyrite, ceramics in the shapes of lizards. All manner of wonderful things have been discovered in the temple and as part of grave goods. Also, some of the earliest metal objects in the Maya world have been found here. Again, we visit those sites, so Joya de Ceren and Tazumal. We visit both of them in the Central American Odyssey and Ancient and Natural Wonders of Central America. And now, just a special mention to the archaeology of Guatemala. We don't visit Guatemala with the cruise ship, but you can do it as either a pre or post extension cruise. So I have them there. So Ancient and Natural Wonders of Central America, you do it as at the end. It's a post-cruise extension, and in Central American Odyssey, you can tack it on to the beginning. They look at things other than archaeology, but again, for my purposes, the most exciting thing you're going to see is Tikal. It is one of the largest archaeological sites and urban centers of the Maya civilization, and it is also a UNESCO site. It was the capital of a conquest state, and it became one of the most powerful kingdoms in Maya civilization. And this temple here reaches 47 meters high. And what makes it even more impressive is the fact that it is such steep-sided that it really is quite imposing in the landscape. Again, occupied for about 3,000 years, but they only start monument building after the first 1,000. There's a ceremonial center with different structures in it. So there are temples and palaces and also public squares that you can access up by ramps. What is nice about this place also is that the surfaces of these structures still maintain some of the carvings. So you have decorated surfaces, carved stone, and you also have murals with hieroglyphic inscriptions. So here there wasn't what we would have classed a written language, but they used hieroglyphs and carvings to tell the story of an event that took place or something that they need to remember, or perhaps a story. Basically that is their record, these hieroglyphs, and it is nice to see them, as well as that very imposing structure of the 47-meter high temple. So thank you very much for listening to me talk about some of the places of archaeological interest that we see on our journey in and around the Caribbean and Central America.